Unlock the path to healing with Exposé podcast. Join us as therapists from around the world break mental health taboos, share powerful stories, and provide insights that transform lives. Tune in, educate, and thrive.
Because whenever we are able to become a witness to ourselves, we have a little bit more space in life to decide how we want to respond to a situation versus just reacting to a situation. So, like in my view, meditation, we're trying to just do a practice that allows the mind to have more space so that when we're faced with things in life, we can respond from a place of spaciousness and not constriction.
Hello and welcome to Exposé podcast. Please help me to celebrate our guest, Michal Cohen. She is an exceptional therapist dedicated to guiding individuals toward their most authentic selves, specializing in ADHD, treating ADHD, psychedelic therapy, and holistic care for wellness and healthcare professionals. She is compassionate and trauma-informed therapist who is based in Hawaii, California, and also Utah, Pennsylvania, and Florida. She often offers virtual therapy that embraces mindfulness, somatic work, and core belief exploration. Join me and please help me welcome Michal to Exposé podcast. Thank you so much for coming and being so patient. The audience doesn't know, but I was a little stressed for a minute as I couldn't pronounce your name, and you were like, hey, let's maybe get grounded. Let's do meditation. And I was like, wait, let me try one more time, and then we can do the meditation after. So thank you for coming and all your work.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here and to get a chance to talk with you. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
You are working around so many areas like ADHD and somatic healing. Would you be open to share what made you to be interested in somatic therapy and all those treatments you are doing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say, in my 20s, I had my own mental health struggles. And so that's what really, and eventually I did get a diagnosis of ADHD. So, and I didn't get that until my 20s. So I think for me, it was, I want to understand how my mind might work a little bit differently than other people. I want to help other people that have been through that struggle not have to go through it maybe the same way I went through it, which I had a lot of challenges finding a compassionate therapist, right? Sometimes my behaviors might have seemed a little crazy in my 20s, and I sometimes felt judged when I was trying to get help. So I think, having those experiences myself and in doing my own healing work, finding psychedelics, different medicines really helping me in my own healing journey. So those things, those kind of personal experiences have really influenced my work and how I chose to work.
Well, thank you for being vulnerable. I always love when therapists are sharing about why they're doing what they're doing, which brings so much, not just credibility, but also it just makes us feel like we're all human. It's, like therapists are not perfect people, and there's some assumption they are having perfect life and, they figure it out because all the therapy and, but,
Right. Because sometimes they say, right, we teach what we need to learn, right? And so, by being a therapist, you also just learn the, best ways to cope with being a human, because we're all going to experience different types of suffering in our lives that affect us. and we want to be able to know resiliency of how to cope with life and what life brings us.
Thank you for adding that. In your somatic therapy, what are your observations from working with people? How, if you can share your thoughts, your insights on how the body heals different than the psyche? What is the research around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the body and the psyche both heal simultaneously. When we heal one, we're helping to heal the other. But, because everything is really connected. But when we talk about, you said, how do I use somatic therapy? It really starts with just getting out of here in our thoughts and actually, oh, what am I feeling, right? My teacher, Dr. Gabor Mate, always says, wherever there is tension, give it attention, right? So if we're feeling something in our stomach, we just place, with the client, we place awareness there, but we always say, if it's too much, we can stop anytime, right? If anything feels too much, we don't want to overwhelm our body into, with feeling things. So, but it's a way to learn how to be with ourselves as we're feeling things in our body. So, and just there, when you ask about the research, I would say an amazing book by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, which really looks at how a lot of traumatic things are stored in our bodies. Right. So we have to also kind of sometimes bypass the thinking mind to connect with what's actually happening right now inside of us.
Is it somatic therapy for everyone? Like, let's say I just left an abusive relationship, and when is the time to start the somatic therapy? Can people go right away to that, or because you mentioned
Yeah,
body heals?
I would.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. I would say, yeah, people can go anytime because we also have what's called within us like a window of tolerance, where sometimes we can be overstimulated and not ready to process really intense, big feelings. But the therapist is going to work with you and you are communicating. So if ever you're feeling something and it begins to feel unbearable or too much, then there's ways to back off of that very gently, right? And we never want to like overwhelm our own window of tolerance. We want to be really gentle and gradual with what we're able to feel, and we then work to gently increase that window over time. Right. So I would say somatic therapy can be started at any time, right? It can be as simple as, can you feel your feet on the ground right now? Right? Can we just put awareness on having our feet on the ground? Right. So there's ways that we don't have to necessarily start with the most intense part of what a person's feeling, but we help a person learn to feel safety within their own body.
Maybe that's the time now to do. Could you do? You actually started doing kind of meditation. Would you be open to? Um, I don't know what is in your mind, but do some few words, few statements around an exercise which our audience can use for getting grounded.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so the I'll just lead like a few minute, little meditation, just a way of coming into the present moment. And when the way that I view meditation or the way that I teach it is coming from the mindfulness teachings that we're not trying to get rid of our thoughts necessarily, but we're learning to observe our thoughts. Right. So the meditation is a practice that helps us become witness to ourselves. because whenever we are able to become a witness to ourselves, we have a little bit more space in life to decide how we want to respond to a situation versus just reacting to a situation. So, like in my view, meditation, we're trying to just do a practice that allows the mind to have more space so that we're faced with things in life, we can respond from a place of spaciousness and not constriction. Okay.
Thank you for adding that. And yeah, that gives an idea about that we can actually, instead of jumping into like panic attack, we can learn the skill to respond. Like, oh, what am I feeling? And that is really a skill, because I remember, I would get easily panic, and with little things, which I discover later on, not everybody does react to the same trigger the same way. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? But then I figure out it's nothing wrong with me, just trauma response. And then, I can learn to change it. So that's powerful.
Beautiful what you just said, right? And that's a beautiful share to share that part of yourself with everyone. What's possible, right?
Yeah, it is. And I am the proof. And you are too. I mean, it feels like.
Okay, so is it okay if I put some music on to the meditation?
Yes, it is. And I'm not sure if we'll hear you, because it's that idea of the sound. Let's see.
Okay.
And we keep it, let's keep it kind of short. And for those who want to connect and work with you and do more meditations, we put a link below. So it's just a sample of how.
Yeah. So yeah, between 2 and 3 minutes. Okay. So taking a moment to just get really comfortable in your seat, making any adjustments, and choosing if you prefer to close your eyes or just keeping a soft gaze, whichever feels best. And starting out this practice, just all of us together, taking a big breath in and letting it all go out with the exhale. And then just taking a moment, each of us, to acknowledge transitioning what we were doing before this moment. It's giving a moment to let that go and giving ourselves space to come into this present moment. And it's okay if there may be some thoughts going through your mind. Just see if you can practice noticing the thoughts, and then ever so gently bringing your awareness to just noticing your own breath, noticing what happens in your body with each inhale. Perhaps there's some expansion in your chest, and noticing what happens with each exhale. Perhaps a softening or letting go. And just continuing to breathe, breathing and allowing. And noticing there may be some thoughts, there may be some emotions. Remembering that everything here is so welcome. Every single part of you is welcome to be here right now in this moment. And then coming back to our breath, If you'd like, you can take an intentionally deeper breath in, and then letting that all go out with the exhale. And staying here, taking as many breaths like this as you would like. And only opening your eyes and coming back when you feel ready.
Thank you, Michal. I got it. I got pronounced it now good, right?
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah. So, and anything if you want to share about that experience, you're welcome to.
Yes, I think that's what I needed at the beginning when you offer me. But I have this survival mode sometimes switching on where I'm like, no, I'm going, persist and push it back and trying to force myself when my somewhere I'm not ready. But I feel like this exercise which you just demonstrate, it's something what we can do even with ourselves, and
Absolutely.
it does settle you down. Like it made me feel I'm safe, because for a moment my body was a little like in a survival mode, but now I feel like okay, I'm relaxed. I can enjoy this conversation instead of just going through it, and and making as many questions as I can, so I can make sure people get the value. It feels like this meditation was worth it to do it, because it really is. Life is about enjoying the moment. So I don't know, how does it sound to you as a feedback? Did I pass the exam?
No, well, there's no right or wrong
Yeah,
response. So, right, we're not grading
yeah, I was,
meditation or how we do, but your response is really powerful because it shows us that if we just take that was 2 to 3 minutes, right? If we just sometimes take 2 to 3 minutes to breathe, and especially when our exhale is longer than our inhale, we're actually helping our nervous system go from more of a fight or flight to more of a relaxed and alert place. So what you're kind of talking about right there is actually that shift in our own physiology, that we can all give this to ourselves just when we take some time to slow down. And just like what you're saying too, a lot of times we're like, oh, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. And we don't think we have the time to even slow down and take a few deep breaths. But actually, once we do that, we actually have a different relationship to time. We feel a little bit more relaxed and not as pressured about trying to get everything done. So that's, beautiful feedback, even though there is no right or wrong of what we feel when we meditate or what happens. But thank you so much for sharing that.
it was exactly how I felt. So thank you for asking me, actually. So you can, guys, put in the comments how it was for you, the video, or email me if you're listening as a podcast, your feedback. I can share with you as well if you want me to. um, I would like to ask you about ADHD. Um, could you share how the ADHD manifests different for women and little girls? And yeah, maybe let's start with that, because I wanted to go to what's the treatment, like how the psychedelics might help with ADHD as well. There's some research on that. I Google it. And yeah, and honestly, I have been microdosing magic mushrooms, and it helped with my symptoms. So
Amazing,
this is
amazing.
this is the first time I'm sharing this publicly, but I feel like I wish more people tried it, and I didn't want to try it for a long time because I had those beliefs, no drugs in my life and all of that. And I felt it was a drug. But then I did my research and I was like, Okay, let's see. So I took the little beast and it's the little, the little beast because I was so afraid that my that what's going to happen, and yeah, it changed my life.
Wow, that's incredible to hear, right? And
Mm.
so powerful, right? We don't necessarily have to have that big dose that can kind of stir up a lot of stuff. So it's always good to start with any substance, go low and go slow, see how your body responds to it, right? And just hearing you like just, with that small amount, what you notice a big shift. It's amazing.
And I'm sharing this, my fears and the effect it had on me because I know that there might be people who might want to try after listening to my testimonial. So, um, but I would like to go deeper into, those ADHD symptoms for women.
Okay.
There's so many women who are like in their 60s, 70s discovering like, oh, I have ADHD. And I know you have been
Uh,
working with Gabor Mate, who wrote the book about, you know, the whole topic and how
yes.
it is a result of trauma. But I want to hear your thoughts on it. And
Okay.
yeah, and if you include the psychedelics, using that in some way, how does it? I know I'm making two questions, but but
It's okay.
how because it's related somewhere. I feel like uh, how does it work in the brain? Like how does it actually help the brain to feel feel treat the ADHD symptoms?
Okay, so there's a lot of questions there. So first, like you might have to remind me of all of them, but let me start first with the symptoms in women and what they look like, right? So a lot of the symptoms could be disorganized. Like if somebody were to ask you to empty out your purse, it would have a bunch of different things in there. Okay. Um,
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing. It is true.
Right, like you might be the kind of person when you cook, all the cabinets are opened and okay, right. And we don't have to judge this as being good or bad. We're just kind of labeling, right? Different minds organize things differently. But when we think about ADHD, right, I like to think of it as curse and blessing. There might be some struggles with organization or with procrastinating, right? So typically someone with ADHD or ADD, it's not that they can't pay attention, it's that they have trouble paying attention to things that don't necessarily interest them. But things that they're interested in, they can actually really focus beautifully on, right? So, like for someone like me, I will procrastinate when it comes to doing my taxes because it's just so tedious. All like I right things like that. So I remember in grad school, I would procrastinate writing papers. Like my brain would not get started until like the night before something is due, which then also creates a lot of stress because you're like, but it's like, okay, then there might be, with regards to interpersonal relationships, sometimes the person might come across as jumping from one topic to the next, sometimes feel like, or maybe sometimes the person gets so eager to share in a conversation that they might end up interrupting another person. And if people don't understand that it's because your mind is working differently, it's not that you're rude and not listening. It's just that you sometimes get this exuberance of, oh, I can relate to this, and you want to kind of share it, right? So those those are some, and certain work environments may not be suited for a person with ADD. So sometimes a person could be getting through school okay, even, right? Sometimes a woman might not know it until her first job, where she's asked to do a lot of tedious tasks that don't really excite her and also require a lot of organization. Like sometimes people with ADD, they get overwhelmed by just the number of emails you can get at a job, right? And you might miss a certain email because there's just so many coming in. So those are, I guess those are some of the symptoms. And I sort of saw you smiling at times or
Yeah, I'm happy to provide some feedback because I think just naming it all makes you feel um I mean, it is just this feeling you wish you could be more organized, you know? You wish like you could work the way people around you who are organized. And it is not in control somewhere, almost feels like sometimes. It feels like you know, when you're naming it, it just makes you feel at least it made me feel that I belong somewhere, you know, that is there's nothing wrong with me. But there is a need for people like us, basically. There is a need in this world who can just go and make a mess and create something out of it and be like, oh wow, I invented you know, a light. I think even what's his name, Einstein. He had this.
yeah,
He had
it, yes, right. And like that's like I didn't even get to say that, but because I said it's a curse and a blessing, because the blessing is the creativity that people have, right? And when you look at lots of the big inventors and creators, right, they were chaotic and disorganized. And we didn't judge that as if there being anything wrong with them, right? So this is a recent thing, just that we've started to put negative labels on people that just function differently, right? We function differently, and that doesn't make anyone above or below. It just means that we're all unique and we have different strengths and different weaknesses.
I love that you said that because it just means, you know, there's really all that shame and feeling like not appropriate, or I don't know the right word to use it, but when you compare yourself when you are, you know, adult, it's great to be diagnosed early, I feel like, where you are like at least understanding this. I feel like, is it, I think it, do you think, well, you have been diagnosed when you were 20 years old, but before that, if you look back, how was it for you when you were like procrastinating and um, having a chaos, comparing to if you could be diagnosed at the age of 7 or 6 and receive some kind of, or at least have people around you who knew that this is nothing you are doing intentionally?
Yeah, I think I would have been treated with more compassion if I had been diagnosed earlier. I think also grad school and college would have been managed a little bit better if I had more of an understanding of how my mind works. I mean, I I found college and grad and especially grad school to be incredibly stressful,
Yeah,
like incredibly stressful, right?
especially
Just
with the
because of the
procrastination, right? Because there's
yeah,
deadline, deadline, deadline. So you have this constant anxiety of like waiting for the last minute and then feeling all that. Oh my God.
exactly, right? So yeah, like I feel like the earlier you can understand how your mind works, the more you're able to no longer, and going back to what you said too, right? A lot of times we think we have this shame of what's wrong with me? Why can't I function like other people, right? And when we realize, oh, it's my mind works differently, it's like empowering because then we start to figure out the best ways that we learn, the best ways that we handle stress, or how to optimize how our mind works and work with that instead of not understanding it. And then it can seem very overwhelming or, right, like I'd say a lot of my women clients with ADHD, they have this belief that there's something wrong with me or I'm not good enough, right? Because they're comparing to somebody else that might have no organizational challenges, but then they are forgetting all these creative, out of the box type of thinking attributes that they have that another person may not have. And a lot of times it's trying to find what environment is going to appreciate you the way you are and how you work and how you see things.
Yeah, it is a journey, and still figuring it out. But the news is good. You can find uh, the right environment work, which suits um, uh, your superpower somewhere in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um, I was going to make some question now, I forgot. uh, I was going even to write it down because it came up in my mind when you were talking. Um, but I will go to the next one. Oh no, actually I have it. Okay. What is trauma? I mean, what is trauma? And if you could define it, why some people would develop trauma, others no, who are going through the same experience, and if ADHD can be a result of trauma.
Okay. So those are like three questions. So
I
let's
went
help me
crazy.
stay on task.
I went
What
crazy.
is trauma? Right? Let me start with that one. I'm gonna go with my teacher, Dr. Gabor Mate's definition of trauma. His definition is trauma is not what happens externally to you, it's what happens inside of you. And what that means is, right, it's the trauma we can is in the beliefs that we hold about ourselves oftentimes, right? So for example, if somebody was abused in any way, emotionally, physically, right? And then that person might have a belief, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, right? That's the trauma at times is what we've started to believe about ourselves, these beliefs. There's also trauma that's stored in the body physically, right? Emotions and sensations that we also need to allow those feelings to be felt with someone that's safe. But so trauma is not just what happened to us externally, it's then internally, what are we carrying about ourselves? How are we seeing ourselves? How are we looking at the world, right? Sometimes we might then think the whole world is dangerous because of something that's happened to us. So we're looking at what are the impacts that this experience had on you as a person. And I think you said too, why does it happen to some people and not other people that have had the same experience? Right. And what I would say there is if you had a terrible experience as a child, and if two people have the same terrible experience, right? Maybe it's getting bullied at school, right? If one person has an adult that they feel safe with and can go and talk to about what happened to them, they're probably not going to develop trauma. Because a lot of times, what children need is a place they feel safe sharing what's happening to them. And then, right, the adult can give them guidance about, okay, this is what we're going to do. The adult, hopefully, a good adult would step in and provide some type of protection and safety when they hear about the bullying versus the child who's bullied and doesn't have anyone they feel safe enough to talk to about that. That is where we might see trauma in that person. So that would be my answer to that question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for mentioning about that it's not only the exterior, but how the trauma can manifest how we think about ourselves, what are our thoughts, pattern, and if we have some relapses like ruminations. And I found it one time even interesting that so many, like, I don't know the percentage, but around 85 thoughts of in our mind are the repetition of the thoughts we had yesterday. I don't know if there is some research, but I found it like interesting when it comes to go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I've heard that too, that a lot of our thoughts are also not exactly true, right? A lot of our thoughts are not true, or um, that our minds get formed based on experiences in our early childhood. And so that creates certain thought patterns, right? Deep deep neural networks of thought patterns versus like, which sometimes when we're doing a psychedelic, we're enhancing neuroplasticity, which means we can have new thoughts, new thought patterns, right? We're able to see things differently. So when we think too about why do psychedelics can help us in healing trauma, right? It's helping, actually being able to change our thought patterns. Because sometimes if someone has a deeply held belief of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, these oftentimes these are beliefs associated with trauma, then it's like that thought has had a lot of airtime in the brain. Very, right. And sometimes psychedelics are helping make it so new thoughts can be present too.
Could you share your thoughts about if trauma can be the reason of ADHD, or if not, or if yes, what are other factors? More questions to come.
I'm getting used to your style. It's okay. You're the question stacker.
The questions. Hashtag question stalker.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest, there's differing opinions about this, and I resonate with the opinion of my teacher, Dr. Gabor Mate, who his opinion is that trauma is a factor in ADHD. Other people may not have that opinion. So I'm just sharing this is, it's an opinion. And, for me, it's looked at like this. If you as a child had something stressful going on in your childhood, you can't just walk out the door when you're a child. So your mind might have started to learn to just tune things out as a means of coping with being in a stressful situation. And so then your mind kind of gets wired with this, what starts out for us as a coping mechanism. Later times it's not always helping us in the same way because maybe we don't necessarily always want to be, tuning out as adults. But at the same time, it's also okay that if this is how our mind works, we give ourselves compassion that this is how my mind works. Sometimes I tune out for a moment and we just make space for that. Like sometimes I might have to say to you, oh, I just forgot what you asked me. Can you ask me again? Right. And the more that I can be okay with accepting that in myself, the more it helps us just living authentically, right? That it's okay if I space out for a moment. That's part of who I am. I accept that, right? And so that's kind of that would be my answer to that question about the trauma piece.
Mm. And it
I highly recommend the book Scattered Minds by Dr. Gabor Mate for a much more thorough, response about trauma and ADD.
yes, and I can put the link and hashtag or tag. He will be like, oh, I know Michal. I know her.
And he has a lot of students, so I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, I love how you mentioned that just being okay with forgetting what I was going to say, just as I spaced out a second ago, as you saw. What helps me is like looking down and feel like I'm getting grounded. So I tend to do that. And I think just being okay with not fitting the normal pattern of like you should be this way or that way. Like being out of the box, like we are out of the box, and just being embracing it and being like, this is my superpower. I'm not.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you have as any rituals or things you created over the years which are helping you to just deal with normal life, like, organizing things and being on time and not procrastinating? Or what do you do? Like, I know it is a process, and people, I mean, our audience can work with you on, because that takes time to unlearn and learn new skills. But is there something you feel inspired to share?
I guess I would say, when you say ask rituals or things that I do, so mindfulness practices have helped me tremendously. All right. And there's different mindfulness practices, right? But so I practice yoga, which in yoga, we learn a lot about being patient with ourselves, right? Which helps us with getting organized. We can realize I can do this, I can take my time, I can be as slow as I need to get this, piece organized. It helps us have more calmness in our minds when we do mindfulness activities, so that we're not like in that space of, oh, I've got to get this done, and we feel this, right, tension, and oh, right. So, like, doing practices that help get us in a calm state of mind is one thing. Um, Another thing I would say is like, the practice too of setting intentions, right? Right, like I just came back from a very big trip, and I haven't started unpacking my suitcase yet because I look at it and I'm just like, oh my God, right? I have to sort out like what needs to be washed, or right. And so what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm going to set an intention of I'm putting my timer around 20 minutes and I'm going to work on this, whether I want to right now or not. Because a lot of times people think I have to wait to be motivated to do this thing that I don't want to do. But it's really, I'll say to myself, how will I feel when my suitcase is unpacked? And then I'm like, oh, that's going to feel good. And then I say, okay, I'm going to put my timer on 20 minutes and just get 20 minutes done. And sometimes we find that when we start something, we have more momentum. So I might say, okay, I'll do another 10 minutes. Or I might say, okay, I'm proud of myself. I got it started. I got this big thing that I don't really feel like doing started. And then I'm going to set another chunk of time later in the day or tomorrow, right? Depending on how important it is for me to get this task done. So I'd say I work with my own self in a very compassionate, non-shaming way, checking in a lot with what's my intention, what's important for me, thinking about how I'll feel once the thing is done. Sometimes that feeling gives me a little bit of energy to actually get started. So instead of thinking about the dread of starting it, we let our mind feel into the glory of having it finished. And then that gives us sometimes a little bit of energy to get started. So those are a few.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot, and I hope that helps our audience or someone who does struggle with ADHD. Um, yes, and if you have a friend who's struggling, send them this podcast. Make sure to connect with Michal. Um, as we're getting to the end, slowly. Is there anything else would you like to add about I know the whole thing about legalizations of psychedelics, it's still in the process, and there are so many congresses going on around which state is allowed, which isn't. But how people can find more safe ways uh, of starting their journey in psychedelics, and if you could share your thoughts on that.
Um, So I have a couple different thoughts. One, I
I
would
know
say,
I surprised you with this question. We didn't send each other the question, so it's like
yeah, I, I would say first, I'm deeply influenced by the work of Dr. Carl Hart, who is a neuroscientist at Columbia University who believes in the legalization of all drugs, right? I think people should have the freedom to be able to alter their consciousness any way they want, right? And so, unfortunately, right now, we don't have laws that really support that, right? Which makes it dangerous sometimes of, right, if I want to try out a psychedelic, how am I going to know that one, you always want to know who you're getting anything from. And ideally, it would be great if we could have everyone could have access to testing drugs so that we know what we're putting into our bodies is safe because there's right all kinds of things, adulterants that can be put into things. And so I start with just saying you want to know what you're getting, know who you're getting it from is so important. And you can get tests different places. I don't know right now off the top of my head where to send somebody for that, but we could look into that. And then, secondly, I would say it's one thing to do drugs or substances or psychedelics, just you want to have a good time recreationally. I believe that's a fundamental freedom that each person has. If you're wanting to use psychedelics for healing trauma, that's a different category of use, I would say. And in that instance, you might want to have a guide, psychedelic guide, because a lot of times, sometimes when we have trauma and we take a psychedelic, we're going into the basement of our unconsciousness. And if we've had painful things in life, those things can really arise in a big way. So in those experiences, you want to make sure that the person who you're choosing to work with, you feel safe with. And that could be a whole other conversation of how do we know if we feel safe with someone, right? But like doing your research about this person, seeing how you feel when you do a one, getting to know them session. So safety is so important, and also understanding the concepts of set and setting with using psychedelics. I want to just clarify, I'm not just giving instructions for anybody to use this, but if you are going to use it, you want to understand that your mindset plays a role in how the experience is going to be, and also the physical setting that you're in, right? So there's I do have a blog on is a psychedelic journey right for you if you're looking at a psychedelic journey through, for healing trauma. I do have a blog on my website that speaks more to that, but those would be the things that first, come to my mind. And I would also say one of my favorite psychedelics is cannabis. And a lot of people don't are surprised to hear cannabis can be a psychedelic.
yeah,
And the
I
great
didn't
thing,
know. Yeah, I didn't know.
oh, yeah, so it can be, right? When we use it in a certain way, in a certain setting and with certain intentions. And so cannabis is, legal in many states, right? So there's lots. So even if the psychedelic a person really wants to try isn't legal, there's other ones that could be legal that you can also find too, right? And so I guess that's what I would say about those things.
Mm. Yes, you answer the question as always, and thank you for mentioning about the cannabis because that's there's probably some information in internet online where people can Google either facilitators around how to do a ceremony psychedelics with cannabis, and then that's to first of all be safe, and second of all make sure to get you get uh, the effect which is therapeutical and not traumatizing you, because it, like you said, it goes deep into your subconscious. So some things come out which, if you don't know how to deal with it, you can get really dark, and it's all the stuff we have been suppressing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why you need a therapist. And are you offering also work? I mean, are you also working with as a psychedelics facilitator, or?
Well, I do work with ketamine and cannabis.
Right. I think that's what I mentioned in the introduction. I forgot for a second. Wasn't sure if that. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk with you, and yeah, I am just amazed with the research about how it really helps the neuroplasticity, and and does help with people struggling with alcohol, obesity, food disorders. And there is so much research going on around it, which I'm personally happy about that. Thank you. Is there anything else would you like to add, share? The stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been just so fun getting to know you and talking with you. And I would just want to say to anybody listening, right, whatever you've been through, healing is always possible. And sometimes we have to figure out what's the best type of healing for each of us. And there's a part inside of each of us that has our own inner healer, and it's just finding the right supports that help us access that part of ourself that's our deepest healer. And so I want to just tell people, like, healing is always possible for whatever we've been through.
Thank you. Because we all need sometimes reminder, especially a reminder, especially when you are, you're healing and there's more stuff coming out, and you're like, I remember having those thoughts, how much more there is, like, where this ends, like, why am I doing this? This feels uncomfortable, but as you slowly release that stuff, you start to just, at least that's my perspective, it's worth it, because we deserve to feel safe, we deserve to be able to express ourselves, and it's all, I feel like, about reaching that full potential. Because if the trauma changes our brain, which the research shows, so it means it decreases our potential, and we are not living the life we meant to have and the impact we could have. So that's why I'm so happy you came today, you shared your story. And for anyone who want to connect, Michal Cohen, I get it right?
Yeah, great.
I will attach,
Yeah.
I attach all the links, and thank you again for being on the show, and good luck with all your work, and see you everyone soon. Make sure to breathe.
Bye.
And drink water. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and please subscribe my YouTube channel. For you, it's a one click. For me, it means the possibility to continue creating impact in the world with those videos. Thank you, and see you soon.